Hey, remember that whole thing when former President Donald Trump was indicted by the DA of Manhattan? What's up with that? No, really, it's been kind of quiet, hasn't it? What is happening with that? Well, I'll tell you this. The House Judiciary Committee is going to be holding a hearing up there next Monday in Manhattan, just blocks away from the DA's office, and they're going to be taking testimony from people who live in New York who would rather have the DA focus on some other pressing issues, like people getting stabbed in the street. Joining us right now is the former acting Attorney General under President Trump, Matt Whitaker, also a former U.S. Attorney. Matt, thanks for joining us, sir.
Larry, always a pleasure to join you. Thank you.
Well, first, let's get to the politics of this. Although it's not just a political move, House does have certain levels of oversight into the actions of this district attorney, considering he's using federal funds for a lot of his activities. What do you think of this by Chairman Jordan actually doing a committee hearing right there in their backyard?
Yeah, I think it's smart. And, the thing that is surprising to me, but again, I'm less and less surprised the older I get, is that we were told during the whole select committee on January 6th that Congress's ability to do investigations is unlimited, unfettered, and if you didn't cooperate, you were going to be put in jail. And now we get to Republicans being in charge of the House, and all of a sudden the same people are on TV suggesting that there are all sorts of limits to their powers, including federalism. But we're smarter than that. We know if you read the letter that Comer and Jordan and others sent to Alvin Bragg, it outlines their powers. And their powers include the use of federal money, the use of federal personnel, and the abuse of the laws that the Congress has written. So there's plenty of oversight ability here.
And it also sends a pretty important statement. This is a guy who has downgraded felony convictions and felony sentences, over half of the felony convictions that he's seen there. He's downgraded them to misdemeanors, and at the same time he claims that he's only going after Donald Trump because the law is the law, like he's suddenly Inspector Javert here. He clearly is picking and choosing what laws are a priority. And I can't imagine the people of New York thinking that ultimately this is going to make a difference in their lives. I understand it feeds this hysteria they have about Donald Trump, but in the long run, life is not good in Manhattan because of the crime problem.
No, you're right. I mean, people's quality of life is certainly less than it was before Alvin Bragg became the prosecutor. And to your point, 52% of all the cases he's pled down from felonies to misdemeanors. Law enforcement is demoralized in New York. Unfortunately, this prosecutor seems solely focused on getting Donald Trump. And I've never seen a case of obvious selective prosecution in my life. I've never seen a case that while the facts happened in 2017, we now get around to charging these crimes in 2023. I mean, this is extraordinary case, and I can't believe that people actually, with a straight face, suggest that this isn't solely an intentional attack on Donald Trump and to try to disqualify him or at least weaken him from his presidential campaign.
So, Matt, listen, I'm not a big eye for an eye guy. I can't remember the wise man who once said that if we all live by an eye for an eye, there's going to be a whole lot of blind people running things around here. So I get that. But at the same time, this new precedent has been set. So what is stopping a district attorney in Florida or Texas or Kentucky bringing up, finding their own grand jury and finding charges against, you name the Democrat politician, Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. There's tons of stuff that should be investigated that we can go after them for. Why shouldn't a district attorney do exactly to them what they have done to Donald Trump?
Well, there's really no reason other than a belief in the rule of law and, kind of what Robert Jackson, who was the Attorney General before he went on the Supreme Court, reminded us that a prosecutor's power is those that don't deserve the attention. And, I think in this case, I'm worried about that, but I'm also worried that Alvin Bragg hasn't explained to us why he's not prosecuting Hillary Clinton for her Fusion GPS payments that she laundered through the Perkins Coie law firm. It is a substantially similar case. Certainly they have jurisdiction because she was in New York for a period of time, including being a New York senator. And so, I just think that in these cases, the American people are going to lose patience if it ends up being this tit for tat. We prosecute your political leaders and you'll prosecute ours. I just don't think that's where the founding fathers intended this country to be right now.
By the way, I'd love for Alvin Bragg to come out and say, well, technically Hillary Clinton's campaign office was in Brooklyn, and that's a different jurisdiction, which would be a brilliant thing for him. It's true, by the way, but then you can say, oh, so if it were in your jurisdiction, you would bring an indictment, which of course he wouldn't. But listen, I understand the whole idea of, we respect the rule of law, but if we're the only ones around here respecting the rule of law, and the other side of the political equation keeps coming after us using the law as a political weapon, we're patsies if we don't fire back.
Well, and that's the concern, right? It's not only that we can't lay down and just take this one-sided, political attack, but it is us. Once Donald Trump gets out of the way, then there's a whole bunch of us that stand in the gap that are equally, even though we have done nothing wrong, we're on the political wrong side of history, and we are going to certainly be targets.
What other aspect of this? I've been told over the last several years that meddling in an election, certainly meddling in a presidential election, is basically worse than triple homicide, right? Oh, how dare you? This is election meddling. Well, for crying out loud, Matt Whitaker, isn't this move to indict the leading candidate for the Republican nomination, in fact, the candidate who is beating Joe Biden in the polls right now for president, isn't this the epitome of election meddling for 24?
It absolutely is. And, the left, when they're tisk-tisking us and suggesting that somehow they are above the fray and we are just these, dirty, poor, wretched political hacks, I think it's rich. I see my former colleagues, especially in the Bush administration, who, have lended themselves to the left, as stooges to try to explain why this is different from any other case. I mean, the bottom line is Trump derangement syndrome is real. It is affecting many of our fellow Americans, and it is only a reason why Donald Trump needs to continue to fight through this and all of the other accusations that have been made against him, because he's really the only person that appears to be threatening to the left, which to me is in America's interest to have someone that can challenge their worldview, because it's incredibly dangerous. We're seeing it play out daily in the Biden administration's policies.
Are you concerned about Merrick Garland's Justice Department in all of this? They've been oddly silent. They never seem to hesitate to make comments about things going on in the realm of justice. And also the Federal Department of Justice, they have a role in sort of setting a standard for the rest of the nation. Shouldn't they speak out one way or the other on this?
Yeah, I think that's dangerous. I mean, certainly we have to, I'm sure Merrick Garland is thankfully in his own mind resting on the separation of powers between the states and the federal government. He doesn't want to comment. I mean, his hands are already dirty with all sorts of political nonsense that he's waded into, including the special counsel investigation into both President Trump and President Biden. Although I can tell you the President Biden special counsel investigation appears to be completely silent and going nowhere. Meanwhile, we hear blow by blow of who's being pulled to testify in the Jack Smith special counsel case against Donald Trump. And so, Merrick Garland certainly is smart to not say anything, and he doesn't have to say anything. Let Alvin Bragg self-immolate if that's what ultimately happens.
Yeah, but he's also got plenty to look at as well with the FBI and more revelations about investigations into Christians and Catholics in this country as potential domestic extremists. It really is a shame how quickly the Justice Department has taken such a turn. I know that you have a deep and abiding affection for the law and for the U.S. Attorney's Office from your past history. It's got to be a tough thing for you to witness.
Well, I mean, obviously the DOJ and FBI was very busy over Easter weekend, making sure that all of their targets were covered as they attended church and celebrated the risen Savior. But that being said, I do have a lot of affinity for the Department of Justice. Justice has certainly lost its way. It's something that needs strong leadership, statesmen and stateswomen that will lead it into where it needs to be, which is above the fray, above politics, and stand for the rule of law.
Amen to that. Well, I hope you enjoy your post-Easter time. And I'm seeing 80-degree weather all week long and sunny skies in Iowa there. Enjoy it. That's Matt Whitaker. More to come on O'Connor Tonight.